Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, KHALID. But today, ladies and gentlemen, is the 5th of August 2022. 3 years ago, India abrogated Articles 370 and 35A, hereby even lessening the rights of the already battered and hapless people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Since then, Muslims across the world, Kashmiris across the world, and Pakistan as well are taking this day as the Istihsal, or the day of exploitation by India to the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Today is the third anniversary of Istihsal. We'll be talking with different guests on the different aspects of the Indian illegal occupation and annexation of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. But after this short report, stay tuned.
Completion of 3 years of the illegal and unilateral actions taken on Indian illegally occupied Jammu and completion of 3 years of the illegal and unilateral actions taken on Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, which were followed by additional unlawful measures, including illegal demographic changes. In the aftermath of this, statewide protests ensued, and the Indian government responded with lockdowns, internet blackouts, and increased presence of security personnel. Despite a series of actions taken by India during the last 3 years to consolidate its hold over Kashmir, the occupied valleys is far from being a cohesive, integral part of the Indian Union. Pakistan is observing Istihsal today to mark the third year of Indian military siege of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and the whole nation will give a message to their Kashmiri brethren, and the people of Pakistan would always stand with them. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif called out India for its continuous use of unbridled force in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and lauded brave Kashmiris for preserving in the face of fear, intimidation, torture, and the worst forms of human rights violations. Pakistan raised the issue at various international forums by highlighting human rights violations and the illegitimacy of Indian actions. General Secretariat of OIC, in a statement released on its website recalling the resolutions of the Islamic Summit and Council of Foreign Ministers on Jammu and Kashmir, reaffirmed the OIC's solidarity with the Kashmiri people in the realization of their inalienable right to self-determination.
Now, to discuss more about this very day, that is the Istihsal, or the day of exploitation, if we translate Istihsal into English, and of course remembering and continuing to see the brutalities that the Indian forces and the Indian government are perpetrating on the hapless people of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. We've been joined by two very important guests, one in the studio, one online. In the studios, we've been joined by Altaf Hussain Wani Sahab. He's a Kashmiri leader. Thank you very much, Wani Sahab, to have joined us.
Thank you.
And online, we've been joined by Dr. Farah Naz, who's a foreign affairs expert. Dr. Farah Naz, thank you very much to have joined us. Let's begin with you, Altaf Hussain Wani Sahab. Third anniversary of the Istihsal, or the siege of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, or the day of exploitation, when the Articles 370, 35A were abrogated. It's not as if before the Kashmiris were living in a very nice environment, but this has further dampened the situation. Is hope still high on the agenda of the Kashmiri people?
You see, as per the hope of Kashmiri people is concerned, that's always very high. They have lived the Maharaja's tyranny rule, they have lived many tyranny rules, and they have been living under the Indian tyranny since last 75 years. And they have faced all the state repressions during this period. And more importantly, from 1989 onwards, the kind of military repression we had in Kashmir, the way India enacted draconian laws to provide impunity to its armed forces for the crimes against humanity they committed. And world over, we have seen the reports regarding the human rights violation in Kashmir, be that the reports of the Office of the High Commissioner, be that reports from the international NGOs, all that. You will go and see the wealth of information about the incidents that took place in occupied Kashmir. But people of Kashmir have resisted the Indian occupation. They will resist it, and hopes are high. As far as the 5th August is concerned, it writes another darkest chapter in the history of Kashmir.
True.
It's on that day India unilaterally and illegally abrogated the articles of its own constitution, Article 370 of its own constitution, and 35A. This was a unilateral action by the India. It was illegal. Even through the Indian laws, Indian constitution doesn't allow them to do so, because any law at that time could have been that should have the concurrence of the firstly by the Constituent Assembly that was not existing there, then there was a state legislature, if that was there, that was not also there. So India talked to its lieutenant governor or governor, and then dismembered the state, and then after that you have seen the host of laws India enacted in order to fasten the demographic change in Kashmir, to further its Hindutva agenda in Kashmir, and for that purpose they have done series of things in the past 3 years. That's why this day is of very immense importance, and to remember this day, to hold seminars, conferences, walks and everything on this day, and to remind the international conference is very important.
That is, so, I think more than anything else, it's very important to remind the international community of its role, of its responsibility as far as pressurizing the Indian government to give the rights of self-determination to the people of India illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This is what they've been wanting since so many decades. This is what India went for, to the United Nations for in 1948, and since then it has completely reverted its decision as far as that is concerned. Dr. Farhanaz, when it comes to the international commitment as far as illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, we've got the commitment by the OIC, we've got the commitment by other important countries. Nevertheless, this commitment or the statements that emanate from different important organizations, even the United Nations for that matter, where so many resolutions are present on this very issue, nothing tangible has happened. What are the major reasons behind that?
Thank you, OMER, for having me. When we talk about the role of international organizations and all those agencies who take responsibility for various human rights issues, I think they have yet not played their role that they were supposed to be playing. If you go back to the very origin of the United Nations, the reason why it came into existence after the World War was to give all human beings their due right. So all nations can work together to give human beings their due share, their due right. And then they also thought about how to execute it, how to make it happen. So they came up with the Geneva Convention. So it could further lead towards, how to have and provide human rights to all the people occupying in different nations. But in case of the Kashmir, I think this issue, we all talk about the India is in violation of the human rights and all of that, is violation of the constitution and all of that. But India is in violation of Geneva Convention. Being a signatory of the Geneva Convention, India has no right to, to take away or to strip off Article 370 and 35A of its constitution, because that is not something that is only related to the Indian constitution, but it has a direct impact on the lives of the protected communities. And when I say protected persons under the Geneva Convention, all those people, if there is some war in a country, so the people of the enemy's armies, the way they have to be treated, it is covered in the Geneva Convention. Then the way the civilians have to be treated, it is covered in the Geneva Conventions. In that both categories, Kashmiris do not fit in, but in the third category of the protected civilians, where the people of the disputed territory, this is Kashmiri people. So anything that is related to the protected civilians, that is the people of the disputed territory, needs to be taken care of under the Geneva Convention. There, it is the failure of all the international organizations that they are not pushing India to overcome all the problems that they are facing there, the Kashmiri people that they are facing there in Kashmir. So India is in direct violation of human rights at one side, but on another side it is directly in violation of the Geneva Convention. So the proponents of all these human rights, the United Nations and the Geneva Convention, they need to take strict measures against India to control it.
But that is where the question arises. That is what my question is, Dr. Farhanaz. Why is there no action? You said they are in violation of the Geneva Convention, of the United Nations resolutions, but nothing is happening, all the resolutions are there, all the human rights reports are there, everything is documented with facts and figures. Even Pakistan has released so many reports with facts and figures. Where is the action?
There's unfortunately no action against India. India enjoys the best baby of all those nations who stand for human rights violations, and it's not only in case of Kashmir. There are several other issues,
True,
Let
true.
alone the Hindutva policy. I would say, is it all about Hindutva and the RSS? That was their election goal that they promised to the
That is true. I
people
think
that if
everything revolves around the RSS mythology, the RSS
yeah.
philosophy, this greater India that includes only the Hindus as
Hmm,
part of it, and
hmm,
not giving the right to any of the minorities. I'm not just relegating it to Muslims, but all
hmm,
the others
hmm,
as well. We've also, kindly stay online with us. We've been joined by Ahmed Bilal Sufi Saab. He's a former federal law minister. Thank you very much, Sufi Saab, to have joined us. Sir, let's talk about the legalities of all of this. Articles 370, 35A, their abrogation, 3 years down the lane. People say that the whole concept of abrogation is illegal. What's your take on that, sir?
Thank you very much for inviting. Well, of course, what India has done to Article 370 and Article 35A is in utter violation of the Constitution of India and also international law, because under international law, Article 370 stood as a commitment whereby it retained the separate status for the territories of Jammu and Kashmir that were in occupation of India, and it was an assurance extended through the constitutional instrument that India will retain this status, and the status quo will continue till such time the issue is resolved in accordance with the aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir and in accordance with the UN resolutions. Until such time the said resolutions are not fully implemented, till then the statehood features of the Indian territory of Kashmir will be retained. And that was the promise to the world that was extended by the Indian government.
Exactly. Now,
Through its
Sufi Ahmed
constitution.
Bilal Sufi Sahab, I'd like to understand. There are two laws that are abrogated by India. Already, the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region is a region that does not belong to India, as per the law, as per the constitution, as per the resolutions that are under the United Nations auspices. Then, by which right legally, in your point of view, does India claim that Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of its country?
Well, the claim is made through an order which is completely illegal, order of 5th August 2019. It is a unique instrument which was created and which is arguing and seeking a claim over the territory which is completely against the Constitution of India as well. And why I say so is that several lawyers from the Indian side have been saying this, they have written about it, and they have questioned the legality of the 5th August 2019 instrument whereby Article 350, 370 and 35A have been rendered ineffective. And that criticism is still available on the record. And despite that, India insists that's a position of the Indian government. So it's a position of the Indian government, and then there's a position of the Indian academics, and then there is a view of the international community and international academics. And we clearly say that the Indian position is in minority, and they stand marginalized in terms of the position that they have been taking so far since 5th August 2019.
Ahmed Bilal Sufi Saab, is there any means to take the issue of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir to the International Court of Justice, because this is already a contested region, and hereby by abrogating Articles 370 and 35A, and also not giving the Kashmiris their due right to self-determination that has been enshrined as per various United Nations resolutions? Is there any legal way for the Kashmiris to highlight their cause outside of India? Because within India, it seems as if nobody wants to do anything about it.
I believe there are multiple forums where issue can be taken, both by the Kashmiris who live in the valley and also by the outsiders. I am not sure if we can take this to ICJ. We need to do some more research before coming to a conclusive opinion on that. However, I believe there are number of other international diplomatic forums where this issue can be highlighted, presented, and it has so many legal supporting features to it that it will on its own gradually develop a momentum of support internationally as well. Because if you are able to present your argument legally and you have an international law backing you up, then gradually we have noticed in more than one occasion that gradually people begin to extend support to you, and countries, they come along and they also start supporting your cause. I believe 5th August 2019 instrument can be legally attacked, and some of the work has already been done on that. And I believe if it is presented systematically, the momentum against India can be built conveniently.
All right. Altaf Hussain Wani Saab, you've just heard Ahmed Bilal Sufi Saab about the legal actions that can be taken as far as the rights of the people of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the abrogations of Articles 370 and 35A are concerned. Are the Kashmiri leaders doing something as far as taking this outside of India to the international legal bodies?
First of all, let me tell you, I'm not a law expert. Ahmed Bilal Sofi is in a better position to tell what are the legal recourses to it, and I have been taking always the advice from him on this matter also. So far as Kashmiri leaders are concerned, you see, first of all, the Kashmiri leaders in occupied Kashmir, they don't have the opportunity to visit outside world. They don't have the passport. Their passports have been confiscated, and they themselves have been put behind the bars after this abrogation of Article 370, even before under the notorious UAPA law. So there is very less they can do. Even the leaders who are the collaborators of the Indian occupation, like Farooq Abdullah, Mahbooba Mufti, and others, at least there are 24 petitions against this abrogation of Article 370 and 35A in the Indian Supreme Court. And already Indian Supreme Court in 1967 has stated that Article 335A is non-derogable. It cannot be changed, because at that time India also. So the Indian courts do not give it any heed to this, and they have put all those petitions under the table, and they are not discussing. They can take any matter, but not the matters relating to the
Despite
Kashmir.
the fact that they had vehemently said in 1967 that this was against the law.
This was against the law. They can't abrogate it, because a try was made in 1967 also by some people going to the Supreme Court. That's why Supreme Court of India is not hearing this, because we see that all Indian organs of the government, be that judiciary, be that their parliament, be that executive, they are in hand and glove and army in suppressing the Kashmiri's freedom struggle through all means, by the legal warfare, through constitutional warfare, through military might, and also through judicial processes. They do all this. As far as the outside is concerned, you see, Ahmed Bilal rightly said, there are multiple forces. Like there is universal jurisdiction for the we have one or two incidents of such where our people have filed the case against the Indian officials who have committed the war crimes in Kashmir. But as taking this matter to the international court, I don't have much of knowledge if it can be done, how it can be done. But it has to be done. Ahmed Bilal Sofi has worked on it very vehemently, and he has suggested even to the government what can be done and what should be done in this regard. And that's practicable. If that is done, that will be helpful.
All right, that is practicable. If that can, I'll come to Mr. Sufi as far as that is concerned. Dr. Farah Naz, when it comes to the international bodies, let's also talk about the European Union. We've got a huge Kashmiri diaspora in Europe, and that there's also Kashmiri leaders there that have been raising their voice against the barbarities of the Indian government. When you look at the European Union and the role of the Kashmiri diaspora there, then you look at the other countries of the West as well, where the Kashmiri leaders have been trying their level best. Then there is the OIC as well, and there is a huge, a statement from the OIC as far as today's day and the third anniversary of the illegal and unilateral actions taken in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region is concerned. I have the statement right in front of me. How important are the roles of these organizations?
I think the role of these organizations are very important. At first place, we have to realize the fact that India has no right to occupy a territory that is really conflicted. So unless and until the area, the conflict is resolved, and by 27th of October, in Kashmir is waiting for to have its plebiscite done. But the role of these organizations that you're mentioning here, it is immense. They need to take into account Article 17, 27, 30, and 32 of the Geneva Convention, which specifically applies that that any state, if there is a conflict involved between two parties, then the life of men and women needs to be protected, and what sort of treatment need to be done. So there is complete, guidelines and ways provided that how to deal with them. But unfortunately, all these organizations, including the United Nations, EU, and all the the regional organizations, including OIC, they are not able to resolve the issue. Where India is too sharp, and I would say they are too clever in not only violating the existing Geneva Convention laws and its articles and clauses, but they have also created and established certain different laws of itself as well, like the Al Safa laws, the PSA laws, and the UPA law. So, according to all these indigenous laws of India, these laws have provided a license to kill in Kashmir and a license to rape. And now, even when there is a complete shutdown since the revocation of Article 370 from the past 3 years, there is no international media coverage available to see what is actually happening on the ground, where the Indian military is forcing women to prostitution, and they have established all those massage centers and everything where they are demanding Kashmiri women to provide all the services, which is against human rights. And if it is out of their will, that's perfectly acceptable. But if it is forced, then it is not acceptable at all. So all these organizations need to come forward, and I would say. First of all, we need to impose the Geneva Convention in letter and spirit, and we have to follow whatever articles are guiding these, the two countries, India and Pakistan, how to deal with the people, the protected civilians over there. And then the role of the OIC cannot be denied, which is the second largest organization after the United Nations. So where there is, a large number of Muslim countries representation, so they have to stand for their Muslim brothers. And I would say whatever happened back in time where the plebiscite was set for the Kashmiri people, I think it needs to be enforced, and it should be the will of the Kashmiri people. Whatever they want to do, they should be given their due
Of course,
right. Because like
it needs to be the will of the Kashmiri people that needs to be imposed in letter and spirit, and that is the main issue that has been in contention, that has not been put into place, implemented since 1948. Ahmed Bilal Sufi Saab, Pakistan has been vehemently talking about and working towards the right of the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, whether it be politically, morally, diplomatically, legally. What are Pakistan's options as far as helping the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir are concerned?
Well, let me first of all give you my understanding. I think we have not been very vehement to pursue Kashmir cause consistently. Consistently is something that I emphasize. There have been periods when we have been following it up diplomatically with a lot of aggressive attitude. And then there have been periods when we have been far less vehement, and we have been somewhat negligent about the cause itself. So that does not send the right signal to the international community. And if we were to take the cause of Kashmiris forward, we have to look inwards as well, which means we need to do the right kind of preparation. We need to create focused people who should be working in these areas. We need to create some sort of a serious a body or a group of people who are focused on constant working. I mean, look at 5th August 2019 legal instrument. It is several pages, a very complex instrument. And my understanding is that at least 20 Indian lawyers were working on it for several months before it was issued, so that they are able to have some sort of plausible justification, whatever that means in that context. Where is a similar team on the Pakistani side? Is there a Foreign Office special dedicated cell or an office being set up? Do we have something in the Parliament which has been set up, which a fully funded secretariat? So let's be clear. If we want to plead the cause of Kashmiris, the cause of Kashmiris can be pleaded very effectively. We need to step up our own preparatory work. I understand the government is busy. The previous government was also busy with so many things, and that preoccupation continues. But the cause of Kashmiris deserves the priority. It is very close to the hearts and minds of people. So let's do a very systematic exercise, a very cohesive exercise, to pinpoint what opportunities are, which doors to knock, which international forums to reach, and what kind of preparation each forum requires. You have to customize your preparation. You cannot create a dossier or a set of documents and start circulating it just like that. You need to be very, very focused on how you are creating that preparation. So my suggestion would be that we need to create a very focused kind of an effort and a strategy for that. And then I'm sure the cause will have its own momentum.
All right. Finally, Ahmed Bilal Sufi Sahab, I've taken a lot of your time. I would like to understand the role of international communities like the OIC, for example, also like the European Union. Do you feel that they could also, with the help of Pakistan and other like-minded countries, develop some kind of a legal and strategic planning as far as to counter what is happening in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and put some kind of a pressure, legal or otherwise, on them to revert back as far as the rights of the people of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, and give them their right to self-determination? What's your take on that as a legal expert?
Yes, I think they can put a lot of pressure. A European Union legal instrument, its courts, and likewise the US government framework. OIC has a forum, but every country looks at Pakistan's own efforts first, and then they make up their mind how far they wish to go. Pakistan was able to make an effort to get an appointment of a special envoy in Kashmir in OIC, but things have not gone further from that appointment. He did pay a visit, but we need to create similar momentum in European Union as well. And I believe the expat community is very charged upon this issue. And on this particular issue, there is no political divide amongst Pakistanis who could be in Europe, London, New York, or anywhere for that matter. So if that support is also knocked into, you will find a lot of passion, a lot of support for this cause of Kashmiris, which can have an influence in the capitals in Europe and US. And of course, one can make use of our own diplomatic community in OIC and other places as well. But as I said, such a matter requires a very cohesive strategy. We are making an effort, but much more needs to be done.
All right. Thank you very much, Ahmed Bilal Sufi Sahab, former Federal Law Minister, to have joined us, to have talked about different aspects of the legality by which Pakistan and other countries can move forward, and of course remind India that what it is doing in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is totally against the law, it is totally against any kind of constitution, and that they need to revert and give the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir their right to self-determination. Altaf Hussain Wani Sahab, we've heard Ahmed Bilal Sufi Sahab, you've also referred to him while we were talking. How important is the role of the Kashmiri leaders abroad, in the US, in the European Union? I've talked to many of them who are extremely charged as far as working for the rights of the people are concerned. What more needs to be done abroad by these leaders?
You see, as Sophie Saab said, that everybody is charged to do something about Kashmir, but we need people at different places with their different expertise. You have to work at different levels and with different expertise. It's not any leader, a political leader can do everything, or a man in foreign office can do everything. So you need, when you talk of law here, how to use it at international level, you need the lawyers of international standard, you need people with that intensity to work, who have worked with international courts, who have worked in that field. So you need those people in that boundary so that they can work on that. Likewise, you have to make your case in the international think tanks in order so that they can influence the policy makers there. So for that purpose, you have the intellectuals of that level who have worked in different conflicts, who have worked in think tanks, who have prepared such missions, so that we should have those people in that line. It's not the diaspora leaders and all that they can do everything. We have to find out the intellectuals in diaspora. We have to give the intellectual input to that in order to counter what our enemy has been doing for the last so many years in international arena against us, against the Kashmiri's freedom struggle. The way they crafted their argument at international level, we have seen that all through EU Info, Disinfo Lab, others have explained us that. But How we have to counter it? It is through that expertise. It's not that just a leader or a procession or something, a seminar can do that.
It has to be a combination of different
things. It's a combination of different people, the experts of different fields. You see, today, you see one of the main topics which is being discussed around the globe is the global warming or climate change. And it's a hot topic in Kashmir. The way the Indian army, the huge army presence in Kashmir, and the way they conduct militarized pilgrimage in Kashmir, how that is creating the hazards on the environment and all that. For that purpose, if you talk in that level, some people will talk you with that. When we talk to international NGOs, as also was right,
you have to match their mentality on the different topics that they are sensitive to.
They're sensitive to work. Like on the human rights, when we talk about, we just have a dossier and we just give to everyone that dossier. You see, there's Amnesty International that works on the arbitrary detentions. That works on that. There's a specialty out there. There is working group. There is Human Rights Watch that has a different mandate, and Frontline has different mandate. Every NGO or every human rights organization around the globe, they have different mandates. They work in. So you have to report each and every one differently. It's not we go just one and we start telling that this is happening, and they say this is not our mandate. This is only one thing. There are NGOs, there are think tanks around the globe who are working on abuse against child, who are working against women. So we have to approach them separately with that expertise. Our people should be so much knowledgeable, so much technical experts, so that they can interact with them and convince them on these points.
That is a very interesting point that you've raised, and I hope that the necessary people are listening to it. Dr. Farah, when it comes to the media channels like ourselves, we've been talking about and highlighting the Kashmir cause, but as Vani Saab said, much more needs to be done, and in a more cohesive manner, things need to be divided as to the expertise of the people, and then they need to take it up, and then collectively they need to move forward so as to highlight the cause from different aspects and different perspectives. When it comes to media, how important has been the role of the media organizations in Pakistan and across the globe?
Before we jump into the media, I think you guys were having a very good discussion about the role of diaspora, think tanks, and all those sectors, which are very crucial in framing policies and designing various strategies, how to mitigate different issues. So in case of that, I would say we cannot, and Kashmiris in particular, cannot beat more than 18 million diaspora, Indian diaspora who is living across the world. And they are well trained and well equipped in pursuing the RSS and the Hindutva ideology. So it is very hard to beat them at first place. Now, the role of media is very important. But when it comes to power politics, all the international media, it is in control of all the powerful states. And India happens to be their favorite child. So will they go against their favorite child? I think no. In case of Pakistani media, we do all what we can, but ultimately we need help and support of all those organizations in the media domain as well, who can help and support and come forward in implementation of not something that we are coming along with new, but something that according to the Geneva Convention, needs to be given to the Kashmiri people. So it is something that we all have to stand for, and it requires efforts and I think strong determination and dedication, and we should not give it up.
So do you feel that the media is doing a role in your point of view to its best level, or do you feel more needs to be done?
No, I think more needs to be done because the issue is quite intense, and Pakistani media needs to stand with its brothers and sisters, and especially when it comes to the revocation of Article 370, where the rights have been strongly, affected. And I would say even today, when we are celebrating and condemning the whatever India has done on 5th August, I think this is one of the way to say that we are not very happy with whatever you have done, and we really condemn that. So such kind of things needs to be highlighted at international levels, and I think it's not something that our two speakers were also talking about, that dossier is not something that can serve the purpose. We need to have something strong, and the role of media needs to play, very dominantly and strongly there.
What I understand, you've been trying to say, and Baloch Saab as well as Vani Saab have been trying to say as well. Altaf and Vani Saab, when it comes to the Kashmiri leaders, when it comes to the APSC leaders, all of them are either in jails or they are under house arrest. They've taken out statements as far as today's importance is concerned, and the resolve for the Kashmiri people to fight for their rights to self-determination. Are the spirits of the Kashmiri leaders dampened? Have their this fight to self-determination been dampened in any way because of their incarceration?
You see, if it had been like that, you would have not seen the resistance in Kashmir. You would have not seen the 640 killings during last 3 years. You would have not seen 17,000 arrests during last these 3 years. You would not have seen the destruction of property of hundreds of houses during last 3 years. You would not have seen the abduction of the people during these years. So there could have been everything very normal. But India preached normalcy in Kashmir because they have snatched each and every peaceful right, the dissent of peaceful dissent from Kashmiris. There is no right to peaceful assembly. You have no right freedom of expression in Kashmiri media. You can't write anything about the detention of leaders, about the illegal actions taken by government of India, or you can't report even a single human rights violation. When you
can't even post anything on social media.
When you report a single human rights violation, or you post it on a social media as a journalist, or you as an ordinary citizen, you are booked under UAPA. And even the one link, the person who was responsible for making Kashmir's case in the UN, where expertise matter. Khurram Parvez was one guy who worked on the enforced disappearances, and that raised his stature to the level of international human rights defender. And he was a link between Kashmiri people, the oppressed people of Kashmir, and the United Nations by sending all those cases to the United Nations. And that's why he is facing the charges under the UAPA. He has been put behind the bars. Asan Nontu is another human rights defender, foot soldier in Kashmir, who always will raise his voice in Kashmir. He is behind the bars in Kashmir. And like many, 35 our journalists who are some at different times, they are charged with the sedition laws and all that, and Fahad Shah, Sajjad Gul and others, Mohammed Zubair, they are behind the bars, like our young scholars like Sana and recently Akhtar Akash, they were denied the right to travel. So this is the way of India has to create each and everything in Kashmir. But despite that, India tried to create an iron curtain between the people of Kashmir, what is happening in Kashmir, and the rest of the globe. But even then, the Kashmiris, they risked their lives. They were able to send those images. They were able to send those incidents to the international media. Then we saw after abrogation of Article 3735A, after 5th of August, you saw lots of coverage in the international press. You saw in New York Times, you saw in Washington Post, Guardian, Al Jazeera, Press TV, CNN, and everybody was reporting about Kashmir. Who was reporting it? It was the Kashmiri guys who risked their lives by reporting this. And then they were either forced to leave the Kashmir, or they were forced in subjugation by the Indian government. But as far as the secret of the Kashmir is concerned, our leadership is behind bars. Almost each and every leader has spent more than half of his life in the jails. Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani died while in incarceration. Ashraf Serai, he died, he was not given the proper medication in the jail. And all other leaders who are in Delhi's Tihar jail this time, be it Shabir Ahmad Shah, be it Muhammad Yasin Malik, be it Masrat Alam Bhatt, Naeem Ahmad Khan, Asiya Indrabi, and others, they all are facing the same charges, and they are all facing the same kind of the repression from the Indians. Recently we saw Muhammad Yasin Malik, how he was sentenced 2-time life imprisonment by the Indians. And in another case, when he asked that I should be given right to present myself physically in the court,
right.
He was denied that court, and he has to go on the hunger strike for that. And then he was told that we have forwarded your request to the authorities, they will, and he was asked to end his hunger strike. So our leaders, and Yasin Malik, while facing the other charges, when he was in the other case where he was sentenced 2 times life imprisonment, he was charged that you have done this. If asking for freedom is a crime, I will do it time and again. That is what each and every leader who is behind the bars, they are telling the Indians the same. Indians tried a lot in past and also presently to win them up, in order to give them some benefits, to give them some package or the political mileage, but none of them accepted that. So when our population sees, people see, our young men see that our leaders are firm in their belief,
That gives them the strength
that
also
gives the
to
strength,
continue.
and so our youth is in firm belief, and their morals are high. They will continue to resist. As one of our scholars who was martyred, he said, when the violations become the end, the resistance becomes then it's for you to resist is your duty then.
All right. So it becomes your primordial duty when even in the hardest and the harshest of times. Dr. Farhanaz, I can understand the Kashmir leaders and their strength and the fight and the resolve that continues despite their incarcerations, despite all the brutalities, despite all the injunctions that have been imposed on them one way or the other, so that this movement can somehow, somewhere be quashed, but it hasn't been quashed since the decades. Nevertheless, no concrete decision has come out as far as the right to self-determination for the people of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, despite, of course, we've talked about the numerous resolutions in the United Nations, as well as the other resolutions in other assemblies as well, including the European Union. How is, in your point of view, the Indian conscience? I mean, I can understand the Kashmiris, they are fighting for their right, but there are Indians there as well. I also understand that the BJP does not want that. We've talked about that. But there are also those Indians who are in the middle ground, who want some kind of resolution to human rights issues. Can they raise their voices, or are their voices also muted?
Well, OMER, do they care about the Kashmiri Indians? I think no, because India does not care about the largest population of India, who happens to be Dalits and all those minority people who are the citizens of India. They don't care about their rights. They don't care about what they want. And especially when it comes to the Indian Kashmiris, they simply want to give them a token of that by the revocation of Article 370, you are a part of the larger Indian community. But that's again in violation of what they want or what they does not want. Another thing is, when we look at this conflict altogether, Kashmir and Palestine conflict, they both are the longest conflicts in the history, and both happen to be Muslim population. So do all these organizations care about the Muslims, and can they come forward in India care about all of this? No, they don't. They do not care about all these people whose rights are in violation and who wants to fight for freedom. And as our speaker was simply talking about that, they will fight to the very last breath that they have, and because this is freedom fighting. So in all of this, what the Indian Kashmiris should do, I would say they are in a very complicated situation where if they become a part of the larger India or greater India, even in that, their rights cannot be given due weightage because they are coming from some other part and they will still be considered someone else. This is my personal opinion. Maybe I could be wrong in the future.
I'll end the show. I'll ask my last question to Altaf Hussain Wani Sahab. There is the BJP, there are the Kashmiris and those who are struggling for their right to self-determination, and then there are those who belong to other religions and those Hindus who are siding with the Kashmiris and with the Muslims. Can some revolt happen from within India? Do you expect something of that sort to happen in the coming weeks, or do you feel that the subjugation of BJP is so strong that even they cannot do anything?
You see, the way the India has been managed by the current political dispensation in India, the BJP led Modi government from 2014
onwards
till date, the way we see, they have on one hand, all the leftists who were in one way or the other way had a soft corner on the human rights situation in Kashmir. They were often on telling the government of India that it is not good, we should have some sort of soften our stand in Kashmir vis-a-vis our military operations in Kashmir and all that. All those voices have been almost caged, or they have been muted by the Indians at that time. Let's say Gautam Naulaka and others, they are facing sedition charges, they are lying behind the bars, and many other people. And we had a huge branch of human rights defenders from South who talk about the human rights violation in Kashmir. May not be on the front of the side celebration, but they would talk on the human rights violation in Kashmir. Their voices have been muted, and whole of the opposition in India this time is struggling, because the BJP created such an environment through fueling the criminal color in the whole of the political dynamics of India, and each and everybody is now in one way or the other way, they are not in a position to scuttle that what BJP has done in order to shaping the current political map of India when we see. And that's what they do. They take one or the other refuge in order to, when they have elections, they will take during one period when there was elections in West Bengal. At that time, there was no harsh words against Pakistan and against Kashmiris, and BJP lost that election. But after that, they said this mantra is not going to work. The only mantra which is working for them is to fuel the discrimination, hatred against Muslims. Their top leaders, their top leaders do always speak against the Muslims, and they take pride in speaking against Kashmiris.
This is a political maneuvering that helps the BJP, and this is what they've been doing. But at the cost of what? At the cost of Kashmiris, at the cost of Muslims, at the cost of the other minorities that are within India as well. Today is a very important day, and today we had to highlight all the different aspects as far as the abrogation of Articles, not only the abrogation of Articles 370, 35A, but of course the barbarities that are being perpetrated on Indian Muslims who are in Kashmir, incarcerated without any rights, and the fact that despite the numerous resolutions, nothing concrete has been done. We've been told, ladies and gentlemen, during the course of the show, of the different measures that need to be taken legally and otherwise by Pakistan and the other countries. I hope everybody who's watching is also listening. I hope some kind of a new mechanism will be evolved in the coming days and weeks by the world community in order to bring to end the plight of the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Altaf Hussain Wani Saab, Dr. Farah Naz, and of course Ahmed Bilal Sufi Saab, thank you very much to have joined us on this very, very important transmission and this show on the 3rd anniversary of the Yawm-e Istihsal. Allah Hafiz.